Hi there. Welcome to Bourbon Turntable. We are the show that blends the love of music with the love of whiskey. With me tonight, as always, is my very good friend, birthday boy, Drew Crawley.
Howdy. How you doing, sir?
Good. Happy birthday a couple days ago.
Thank you very much. I appreciate it. We actually got to enjoy some live music and whiskey on my birthday by happenstance. It wasn't even planned, but we both have supremely great taste in music and whiskey. So we ended up at the same bar in Jeffersonville, Indiana, watching a band for several hours. So it was a good time.
It's a lot of fun. Supreme taste in whiskey, women, and music. So
yeah, pretty much all the good things in life.
Everything that you would want, yes. But tonight we're going to be talking about Taylor Hawkins and the Taylor Hawkins Tribute Concert that happened a couple weeks ago. And there'll be another one coming up in a couple of weeks from now. So we want to talk about that a little bit because it was a very significant event in music. And if you haven't had a chance to see it, I would highly recommend that you go online and stream it. But before we get into that, we are going to tell you a little bit about the Bar Cart Co-op. Bar Cart Co-op, it's a group of friends that enjoy doing shows and talking about different aspects of the whiskey world. With Distillers Talk, you have Alan Bishop and Christy Atkinson, and they talk with, get this, distillers. It's a clever name. But they talk with distillers from across the country and really around the world and get their insights, their tricks of the trade, talk about different ideas and methodologies and histories. It's a fascinating show, and I highly recommend it. Alan also has another show that he does with his wife, Kim, called If You Have Ghosts, You Have Everything. And that really gets into the spirit side of the spirits. My Whiskey Den airs every Monday night with Pat and Mike and sometimes Ben. And then you have our show, Bourbon Turntable. And we're looking at adding in some additional shows in the near future. So we will keep you posted about that. And we also wanted to thank everybody that tuned in for our anniversary show on last Wednesday. We had a really good time with that. I want to especially thank Mike and Pat and Alan and Jolie and Blake from Sealbox and Bourboner for coming in and hanging out with us for a little while and reminiscing about some of the past shows and talking about some of the things that they each had going on as well. It was a really good time.
Absolutely. Yeah. That was a fun night.
Yeah. I thought so too. We had a lot of people in the chat and they were active. And but if you haven't seen it, you can go to our YouTube page and check that out. I know you'll enjoy it. And wanted to share one more piece of information.
All right. Don't forget to like, comment, share, subscribe, hit the bell notification to find out when new episodes come out, which is every Wednesdays on all of your streaming services everywhere. Apple, Spotify, whatever other ones there are, and the YouTube where you can watch the live recording itself.
Thanks, Mike. And you can turn off the show now. You've already been on. So, but tonight we're wanting to talk with you about about Taylor Hawkins and about the Taylor Hawkins Tribute Concert. Now, Drew, I know that you've had a chance to see this.
Yep. Made me finally get around to getting a Paramount Plus subscription. Yellowstone wasn't doing it, so but now I guess I'll have to watch Yellowstone. No, fantastic show. I know we're going to talk a lot about Taylor's life and stuff today, but just oh my gosh, how many people has that guy impacted, and how many great bands has he played with? Great young drummers has he influenced? It was really, really great to see. I'm sure we'll get into highlights, but seeing the guys from Queen play that venue and do some great little moments there. I think of when Brian May went down to the front of the stage with his 12-string and hearing that whole place sing along. That was really neat. So yeah, it was a great show.
Yeah, it was. But before we get into that, we want to tell you a little bit about Bourbon on the Banks. And Bourbon on the Banks is, well, we're actually going to have AMSI Winning on next week, but we want to go ahead and tell you about Bourbon on the Banks. It is September 30th and October 1st in Frankfort, Kentucky. It is a wonderful, wonderful whiskey event. There are a lot of different activities going on. There's a VIP reception on Friday the 30th, Bourbon Street on Broadway, where they basically shut down Broadway, and they have different vendors and for food and drinks set up there. Also Friday night, there's a pub stroll. Then on Saturday night is the main event, which is the Bourbon on the Banks Festival. And then where there are dozens of fantastic distillers and vendors there. They'll have live music there. It's a wonderful, wonderful event. Highly encourage you to go. So go to bourbononthebanks.org for tickets or more information. So, well, we want to talk about Taylor, and this is a little difficult because it's hard to get past the fact that this is how tragic his passing was. And during the concert, there were several times where the people on the stage talked about Taylor's family and Taylor as a dad, Taylor as a husband, and then of course the way the show closed, which we'll talk about in a little while. But Taylor was only 50 years old, and he was married. He had 3 children, and we all best know him as the drummer for the Foo Fighters. But Taylor was not the original drummer for the band. They've actually had 3 drummers, the first of which was Dave Grohl himself, right? He played drums on, really played drums on their first 2 albums, because the second album, he didn't like, when they finally put together a real band, he did not like the way William Goldsmith played the drums, and they could not agree on how that needed to happen. So basically they re-recorded the entire album, The Color and the Shape, which you can see over my shoulder here. They re-recorded the whole album with Dave playing the drums. And then when Dave was looking for somebody to come in to be the next drummer of the band, he knew Taylor. He didn't know him that well, apparently, but he asked his opinion about, hey, who would you recommend? And to Dave's surprise, Taylor volunteered himself, because he was touring with Alanis Morissette, and at the time, Alanis Morissette was a much bigger act than the Foo Fighters. But Taylor wanted to be in a band. He didn't want to just be a drummer. He wanted to actually be in a member of a band. So he joined the Foo Fighters in '97 and played on every album from '99 to last year's album, Medicine at Midnight. So he had trouble with addiction in the past. He had OD'd on heroin in 2001, was in a coma for, I think, a couple weeks. And then March of this year, about 6 months ago, he died from overdose of just a variety of drugs while the band was in Bogota, Colombia. So, and it really shook the music world, and obviously shook the Foo Fighters. So,
yeah. Tragic loss for many reasons, but especially, like you mentioned, that family. That's tough. Stuff.
Yeah. But the tribute concert itself, what went on for around 6 hours. I think they had about a 50-song set list. And I think Dave Grohl was up there playing. He may have played every song with every band, but he played something, I think, with every artist that made an appearance. So that says a lot about him as a musician and his endurance and his commitment to that show, and to Taylor, and to Taylor's memory. But Drew, what were some of the things that stood out to you in that show?
Yeah, yeah. Well, I mentioned briefly before, but the moment where I think it was just Roger and Brian from Queen were out there on stage. I thought that was really neat. Um, just their set list and who all they incorporated. Um, I forget what the name of the vocalist was that they brought out for Somebody to Love. But he's kind of blowing up right now online too, so that was cool.
Yeah.
Other highlights: Mandy Bichelle coming out and playing was fantastic. Have you kept up with her? Like, do you know anything about that story? Okay, well, they mentioned it a little bit on there, but this little girl is a kick-ass rock drummer.
Yes.
And a couple years ago, she challenged Dave Grohl to a drum off. They've done stuff on, I think, Kimmel together, and they've brought her out every time they've played in London since then. That's where she's from. So that was pretty neat. Obviously, the big moment at the end was very moving. But I think the thing, just kind of zooming out, that was so impressive was watching the breadth of influence that he had, but also just how many people loved him. I mean, there were some bona fide legends on that stage. Sir Paul and John Paul Jones, and and knowing that Taylor had not only their respect but also their friendship, it was really cool to see.
Yeah.
So
he in a lot of ways, and I guess you could say Dave Grohl and the Foo Fighters in general, but specifically Taylor, is a bridge from the artists that were popular back in the 60s and the 70s, and to the people that listen to the Foo Fighters today. I mean, Chrissie Hynde was out there, and quite honestly hasn't lost anything on her voice. And I think she turned 71 last week.
Wow.
So, there may be an entire generation of Taylor Hawkins fans that now know who the Pretenders are.
Yeah.
Because of Taylor. So I thought that was pretty cool. And, early on, Dave Chappelle came up on stage and he told a story about how he met the Foo Fighters. They were both on Saturday Night Live together, and then Dave hung out with them at some shows. They went to see went to a jazz club together, and he mentioned that Shane was sitting there studying the jazz drummer right next to his dad, and that Shane said to his dad, you can't play like that. and he said, yeah, he goes, son, those are real musicians.
Yeah, you gotta love it.
Yeah. Then Wolfgang Van Halen came out, and he played, and that I thought he was tremendous.
I did too.
There was some buzz around the internet for a while that saying that he wasn't really playing, that it was a track. And that just is insane to me.
Yeah, I heard that, but I would be appalled if bands, or if the Foo Fighters, who are notorious for using reel-to-reel live tracking recording exclusively, would let that go on. Yeah, I think that's BS. But.
Yeah, I think so too. But Justin Hawkins, the lead singer for The Darkness, was singing with them. I believe they played Hot for Teacher. What else was it? Oh, On Fire and Hot for Teacher. Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. So that was good. Josh Homme came out with Nile Rodgers. Omar Hakim played drums. and they sang a couple of songs off of David Bowie's Let's Dance album, which Nile Rodgers produced, and Omar Hakim played on. I've always thought that Josh Homme's voice, if he worked it just a little bit, could be a vocal doppelganger for Bowie. I think there's some very strong similarities between the two.
Okay, that's interesting. I hadn't really thought about that. I was going to ask what you thought of his vocal performance, because I couldn't tell if it was sound issues or something, but there was a lot, I felt like, of very flat notes when he was singing. At first, it got better later in the night. The Them Crooked Vulture set was better.
Yeah,
when he came back out.
I don't know. I didn't really notice that. I'll go back and watch that. That's an interesting point. But
just curious. It could have been a thing where, he was the second or third act up. In-ear monitors might not have been working all right at that point. There could have been 1,000 things.
I mean, and that's another thing. Just consider the logistics of all of that. I mean, you must have had the greatest roadies on the planet.
Absolutely.
Tearing down stage to drum kit, guitar techs, sound, and overall, I was very impressed with how all that worked.
Yeah, absolutely. Whatever those drum techs were getting paid, I'm sure it needed to be double. The hardest thing to set up.
Yeah. One thing that was also interesting in the show was Violet Grohl came out and sang. Dave Grohl's daughter. What are your thoughts on her?
I think she's fantastic. Everything I've ever heard her do is great. She's always going to have a little bit of the shadow of I forget her first name, but Chris Cornell's daughter. In terms of famous rockers, kids, singing with them. But man, she killed it. And then she came out later and did Valerie with Mark Ronson and a few other people. And thought she did a great job with that one too. Her voice speaks for itself. She doesn't really need to exude a big stage presence or anything like that. She's got leading lady voice, man.
Yeah. I did think it was interesting when she first came out on stage and stepped up to the microphone, and she looked out at the audience. She goes, "Oh, wow, that's a lot of people."
Yep.
But I didn't notice that it phased her one bit. I thought she nailed it. And a lot of times you don't know what you're going to get with kids of rock stars. I think Wolfgang Van Halen and Violet Grohl are both really good examples of people that are legitimately very talented on their own and are earning their own way, even with a little, head start on everybody else. But
sure.
I don't think they're resting on their laurels at all.
No, definitely not. What was after that?
How about Them Crooked Vultures?
Dude, I went back and listened to everything that they put out after I finished watching the concert. Yeah. That was the soundtrack for the rest of the week. They're great. Just great.
Well, the interesting thing was, first of all, yes, they were great. And John Paul Jones at 70-something years old, he just nailed it on the bass.
Oh yeah, I didn't even recognize him. It took me like 3 minutes into him being. I was like, "Who is this old guy?" Because everybody else that they brought out is very recognizable.
Right?
Who the hell was that?
Yes, does not look like John Paul Jones, but yes. But the first song they did was "Goodbye Yellow Brick Road," which I thought was very interesting. But Taylor had established a relationship with Elton John.
I was going to say Taylor's been playing with Elton John for about the last 3 years.
Yeah.
So,
and then they played "Gunman," which was off of the Them Crooked Vultures album, and then they played "Long Slow Goodbye," which is a Queens of the Stone Age song. That they were fantastic, and I love that Them Crooked Vultures album. I think it's one of the you have these super group things that bounce around from time to time. That one was terrific. I really enjoyed it.
For probably the last 3 or 4 years, that has been my "Going to the Airport Before the Sun Is Up" album. And there's something about it when we're getting in the Uber headed to the airport 4 a.m. or 5 a.m. whatever. That's the record that is getting put on. That's my get up and go. Yeah, they were excellent.
The Pretenders came out, and they're I think Chrissy Hynde is still right on it, and really enjoyed her. What were your thoughts on Pretenders?
Yeah, so that's a band that I really am not all that familiar with. So I thought that they were fantastic.
Yeah.
Her voice, as you mentioned, some of the guitar work was really cool. It was definitely a thing where I was like, oh, I'm going to have to go back and give it a little bit of a listen to that. Haven't done it yet, but I was impressed enough to say, oh, I got to figure out what this band's about. So
yeah, I mean, they were pretty groundbreaking back in the day. Female guitarist, lead singer for a rock band. That was not necessary. That was certainly not a common thing. But she and Martin Chambers have both been the drummer. They've both been with the band since its inception. So,
wow,
that's 50 years almost.
That's crazy.
Yeah, maybe even a little longer. So, yeah, it's pretty darn cool. Yeah, close to 50 years, I think. So yeah, they're fantastic and well worth digging back into their discography. Then Joe Walsh and the James Gang came out, and Joe Walsh is, I mean, he again, a guy in his 70s, and I saw him. I saw Tom Petty and the Heartbreakers a few months before Tom passed, and Joe Walsh was the opening act.
Oh wow!
Yeah, and at that performance, a lot of the guitar solos, he let the guitarist in his band handle. And I thought, well, okay, he's just kind of out here, doing a farewell tour, making a little money or whatever. But he played the solos and everything at that tribute concert, and I thought it was fantastic.
Yep, absolutely. No, they were great, and it was cracking me up because I was like, okay, if I was there, I would be losing my ever-loving mind to that. That seemed like one of those experiences that was cool for us to see, on the screens. But like you could tell, people that were guitar fans were losing it over that in the stadium. Yeah, that was cool. Yeah, it was interesting to me to hear him, because I haven't listened to the James Gang separately either. But to hear kind of a little bit harder version of his guitar playing, his voice, sans Eagles, was pretty cool.
Yeah, I thought so too. But then Brian Johnson and Lars Ulrich came out, and they played a couple of AC/DC songs with the rest of the Foo Fighters. So that was pretty cool.
Yeah, that was neat. What are your feelings on AC/DC as a whole? I know this is the Taylor Hawkins show, but it's I go through phases with them, so I'm curious your thoughts.
I like AC/DC. I like them quite a bit.
Yeah.
It's interesting to hear people get into the Bon Scott versus Brian Johnson debate.
Sure.
And I think that most people are going to fall on the Bon Scott side just because they feel like they have to.
Yeah.
But some of the most successful AC/DC albums and songs were under Brian Johnson.
It's true.
And they've been playing basically the same album for almost 50 years, and but they know what they do, and they do it really really well. And so I like AC/DC.
I do see that. Fun. There's times when I'm like, oh, maybe throw on some AC/DC at the gym or something. or whatever. But I was talking to this or to my dad about it a while back, and he was like, "Yeah, you know who AC/DC makes their music for? Mechanics." Ever since he said that, I was like, I can see every tire shop I've ever been in probably has AC/DC heavily in the rotation. And is there a band that has more sexual euphemisms than AC/DC?
No,
We're shaking and rocking, and
there are two topics to an AC/DC song. One is sex, the other is rock and roll. If it's not about one of those two things, they're not singing about it.
Not an AC/DC song. And sometimes those things are intertwined and exchange in the same song.
Yes, absolutely. Maybe a few songs about hitmen assassinating people, which, their drummer, Phil Rudd, got arrested once for hiring a hitman. So
I did not know that.
Yeah.
That's a fun little tidbit.
Yeah. That wasn't that long ago, maybe 4 or 5 years ago.
Okay.
But
that's funny.
Yeah. So no, and at some point we'll do an AC/DC show and really dig into a lot of that. Because there's a lot to dig into. There's a lot of really fantastic songs, but they're a band that Taylor loved, and they're bands that love Taylor and respected him.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Yeah. Stuart Copeland came on, who I think is one of the more creative drummers of my lifetime anyway.
Definitely.
But again, a guy that Taylor had a lot of respect for and meant a lot to his formation and his development as a drummer. But he understands and respects Taylor and where he had been, and so there was that, hey, you're my hero type thing, and okay, now we're peers.
Yeah, that was really neat. And on that point too, you had mentioned it a little bit already earlier, but if you think back to it, on that stage and with Taylor kind of being the median, there's 50, 60 years of rock and roll drumming. And then, based on some of the other people and players that we saw later in the evening, there's probably another 30 years of great rock and roll music and great rock and roll drummers coming. So that made me happy.
Yeah. I think that's absolutely the case. Then find that photo. Alex Lifeson and Geddy Lee came out, and the Foo Fighters inducted Rush into the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame.
That was a great speech.
Yes, it was. They were, and it was a great show. I am personally not a big fan of the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame for a variety of reasons. One of which is they inexplicably kept Rush out of there for several years after they're eligible for induction. But I think we'll do a show on that sometime too.
Yeah.
And maybe
we'll drink absinthe and get sassy.
It won't take long.
No,
it won't take long at all. But Taylor was obviously a big fan of Rush, and they were good friends with him and with the Foo Fighters. And I got a thought there. We'll dig back into that in a minute.
Okay.
But then
didn't Omar Hakim play drums with them as well? Wasn't he the one sitting back there?
I thought it was Dave.
The rest.
I thought it was.
They
Dave.
might. I could be wrong. I know they switched at some point, but yeah, they were awesome. Sorry to sidetrack that.
No, that's fine.
Sure, we can look it up on Wikipedia. I know you're a big Rush fan. Did you happen to catch their performance at the South Park 25th anniversary thing? Yeah, that was fun too.
Hilarious.
Not a big South Park fan, but I saw Rush play South Park, and I was like, I'm going to watch that. That seems like a great way to start a Tuesday morning.
And it was, and Grohl was playing drums.
Grohl was the guy. Yeah. Awesome. Thank you.
Yeah. Then Brian May and Roger Taylor came out. Queen, and Roger Taylor was the first inspiration for Taylor Hawkins to want to learn how to play drums.
Mm-hmm.
And that was very, very cool to see them come out and play. Big Queen fan?
Oh, yeah. Yeah, massively. Yeah. I think I've told you this story, but Caitlin and I go play trivia at the pub that's right down the street from us sometime. And we were there the other day. This was maybe 6-7 weeks ago now, maybe a little longer. Doesn't matter. But we were in an all music night, and we were killing it. We had cleared the board the first 3 rounds. Then the next round was asking us to identify a Queen song from a lyric, and we both looked at each other and we had blanked, and we both of us simultaneously. And it was an easy one, layup. Everybody should have known it, especially us. And when we got that one wrong, we got up and walked out of the bar. It was not. It's like, if we're gonna miss a Queen lyric, we're finished. It made me so mad.
Yeah, but that was a very, very cool part of the show.
Do they have a official lead singer now, or are they not really doing much? Because they had gone through a couple different things, but they had Mark Martell for a little while. They had Adam.
No,
I don't remember what. There's there was 2 Adams in
Adam Lambert.
Adam Lambert, that's who it was.
Yeah.
So I didn't know if they had an established singer, because they had, I think, 2 or 3 different people come out and sing with them.
Yeah, I don't know that how active they are right now, honestly.
Okay.
But it's one of those things where it's very difficult to see Queen without Freddie Mercury.
Yeah, I was gonna say, I don't think there's a band that you would rather, or would less rather be the next lead singer of.
Right.
There's a one of one when it comes to best male rock vocalist of all time, in my mind.
Yeah.
And you just can't replace him.
Yeah.
Can't replace him.
Then the Foo Fighters came out, and they started their set, and Josh Freese, who he's played with several different bands. He's been with kind of the second iteration of Guns N' Roses. He's played with Weezer and 9 Inch Nails. He sat in playing drums. They played Times Like These and All My Life.
Mm-hmm.
Then Travis Barker came out, and he was the one that Dave remarked, I think he forgot his shirt.
I've seen them a couple times live. I don't think he's ever worn a shirt.
Everybody's got to be known for something, I guess. So
I suppose so.
Yeah.
He killed it, though. I mean, you can't argue with the man drumming chops.
No, he was good, and he played on Pretender and Monkey Wrench, and then Nandi Bushell, who you mentioned, she came out and played on Learn to Fly, and then after that, Rufus Taylor, who is Roger Taylor's son, came out and he played on One of These Days and The Best of You.
Yes.
And Rufus looked a lot like Taylor Hawkins.
Like Taylor. I know. It was weird to see.
Yeah.
Even the same tattoo in the same place.
Yeah.
That was cool.
Yeah. Then there was a little break in the Foo Fighters songs, and Paul McCartney came out. So
bummer.
And, yeah. And I know that they'd worked together on some stuff. They'd worked on what was it called? The project
Sound
with
City.
Sound City. Thank you.
Yeah.
They worked on Sound City with together. He'd worked on that with Dave and Taylor, and I think that they played together live a few times, and so Paul came out, Chrissy Hine came out, Omar Hakim came back out, played drums, and they sang "Oh Darling," and then they played "Helter Skelter." Then they sang "Aurora," which is one of Taylor's favorite Foo Fighters songs.
Yeah, that's a great one.
And then this kid came out.
Dude. Yeah, just stabbed me in the freaking heart.
Oh, my.
I was a puddle.
Yeah, I mean, Shane Hawkins is 16 years old, and I'll be darned if he doesn't play like his dad. He's got that energy, that drive, that ferociousness, and that smile on his face that Taylor played with. And they played My Hero. And yeah, it was, my eyes were sweating pretty bad.
Yep.
By that point.
I'm getting emotional thinking about it now. Yeah.
I don't know. How do they play that?
I don't know, man.
How do you do that? I have no idea.
You just let it rip, I guess. I don't know. He played the shit out of those drums. Though.
He really did. I mean,
killed it.
I mean, the thing is I remember first time I ever saw Nirvana was on Saturday Night Live, and Grohl was behind the drums, and he had long stringy hair, and arms were flying everywhere, hair was going everywhere, and it was just ferocious. And then you watch the way that Taylor plays, and he's his own drummer in his own right, but he has that same type of energy and violence.
Yes.
When he plays, and Shane plays the same way.
He does. Yeah. There's one of my good friends who you know as well, Lorenzo. He calls that the savagery of a drummer. And he's like, he either has the savagery or he doesn't. And I love that description because you just know it's a visceral thing.
Yeah.
There are drummers that can absolutely kill it and play fast and loud and hard, but they don't have that something. But yeah, Shane had it, man.
Yeah.
He had it.
And then Dave closed the show with an acoustic version of Everlong. That was, again, after you played My Hero with Taylor's Kid. Then you're going to go and you're going to play one of the most emotional Foo Fighters songs that there is.
Yeah.
Tip of the cap to Dave Grohl. I think that kind of sums up that photo of him trying to speak into the concert. I think that kind of summed up the emotions that most everybody was feeling at that point.
Yeah, I think you're absolutely right.
Yeah,
absolutely right. No, it's good. The moment of times like these, those lyrics, and hearing all those people sing that back, and then to close with Everlong, I was a mess, man. I'm sitting in my office on my lunch break, kind of watching it in pieces over the last week, and man, yeah, it was emotional.
Yeah,
he was a legend.
No, go ahead.
No, I was looking earlier in the week when we decided we were going to do the show, and thinking about how many people he's played with. You mentioned Alanis Morissette. We talked about his cover bands and stuff like that. He's played with Coheed and Cambria. He's played on Paul McCartney records, Miley Cyrus records, Elton John, Ozzy Osbourne. I mean, just everyone. And by all accounts, he was so well loved and so well respected by every single person that he met.
Yeah. Yeah, I definitely had to be one of the most likable people in rock music by all accounts. But Dave kind of has that reputation as well. And He referred to Taylor as being his brother from another mother, that he's his best friend. So I guess, what do you see as Taylor's legacy then?
Well, I mean, it's hard to sum it up. He's always going to live somewhat in Dave Grohl's shadow, I think, when you think of that style or that genre of music. But he carved it. Yeah, he carved his own path through that. And I think they were probably very intentional in how they did that and went about it, right, and worked together to make him the real drummer of the Foo Fighters, right?
Right.
Not Dave Grohl's backup. But then, I think just like he was inspired by Roger Taylor and all these other great drummers that we saw throughout the night, there's a whole generation of other drummers coming up behind him that will hopefully exude that, not just the musical excellence, but the kindness and the, mutual respect, and just the being one of the best people in addition to one of the best drummers. So I don't know. That's going to be a tough one, but I think we'll start to see it. I wouldn't be surprised if we started to hear more and more of his influence as generations like mine that came up with the Foo Fighters, kind of our rock and roll band, that sound and those techniques and stuff start showing up some more.
Right. Because there is, if not a generation, at least a half a generation that doesn't know Dave Grohl as a drummer. Right. Taylor Hawkins is the drummer. But Taylor Hawkins also would be the lead singer from time to time. When
he wrote a lot of the Foo Fighters songs.
Right. He had co-writing credits on a lot of the Foo Fighters songs. And when they did the Wembley show several years ago, and had Jimmy Page and John Paul Jones come out and play with them, Dave went back and played drums, and Taylor came up and sang vocals.
Yep.
So
it's crazy.
So that was pretty cool. And then
we're playing Wembley. Let's put everyone on instruments they don't normally play. Cool. They're always having fun.
We're playing Wembley with Jimmy Page and John Paul Jones, and we're going to cover Led Zeppelin songs with them. And let's take the guy that usually sings lead and put him on the drums, and the guy that usually plays drums and put him out as lead singer. That's easy.
Yeah, let's just fool around. Yeah. Yeah, it's crazy.
But when they would do a Queen, when they would Somebody to Love, Taylor Hawkins would sing lead on that.
Yep.
So I thought that was kind of cool. And he did have his own band, Taylor Hawkins and the Coattail Riders, and then he had a cover band called Chevy Metal. So
they were fun.
He just loved to play. He just loved to play, and I hope that part of what he's remembered for is the joy that he played with, and again the energy and the excitement that he seemed to bring to it all, and hopefully that is what he's known for. But he's also an outstanding drummer, and in my opinion, got progressively better as he went along in his career. I think the last Foo Fighters album was an outstanding drum album, and probably the best work that I've heard from Taylor. And part of the tragedy of this is you're not going to see what's going to progress from there. You're not going to get to see, okay, well, what happens next? And that's takes backseat to the personal side of all of this, but from the musical side of it, that's a loss. That's a real loss.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Because you look at how long a lot of these guys play today and continue to. I mean, some of them kind of top out and coast. Rolling Stones, but you look at a lot of guys don't. A lot of guys do continue to get better, and I think that was clearly the track that he was on.
Yeah.
So, what do you think is next for the Foo Fighters then?
Man, I was thinking about this, and I was talking with another buddy of ours, Evan, about this last weekend. But I don't know, man. I sort of feel like that's the band. If they made another record, it's not the Foo Fighters anymore. To me, I'm not saying that's to them. That's obviously, they're like a family at this point, so that's going to be an in-house discussion that they have to have. But to me, even if it's everybody with a new drummer, it's a new band. You change the name or you do something because that was their band. But if they were to replace him, I mean, gosh, there's not many that could do it. I know Travis Barker has played some dates. I think when Taylor had broken an arm or something early on. Obviously, there's no want of drumming talent. It's just who's unattached and all that. I'd love to see Shane Hawkins. I'd love to see Nandy Bichelle, play with them, but they're kids, and I don't know if a band of 50-year-old-ish guys, are going to want to take a kid on the road. That would be a good thing for a kid. So I don't know. There's a lot of possibilities, but I would love to hear more music from the Foo Fighters. I just don't know how you keep a band like that without Taylor.
Yeah. I mean, I think there are a couple of ways that they could do it. I mean, you could record an album with Dave playing drums. Then when they toured, I think Rufus Taylor playing drums on tour with them would be a really good fit.
Yeah.
And then, maybe when he's older, a few years down the road, you work it where Shane Hawkins is the drummer.
Yeah.
I mean, I think you can keep the Foo Fighters as the name the Foo Fighters if you do something like that. But it's not easy. It would not be easy at all. But I don't know what happens. I mean, what happens next for Dave Grohl? I mean, he's lost two bandmates and two people that were his best friends during his musical career. So, I mean, certainly you couldn't have had Nirvana without Kurt Cobain.
Absolutely.
But I don't know. I think it's, not to be insensitive, but I think it would be easier to have bring in another drummer. Obviously, you couldn't have if you didn't have Dave Grohl, you would not have the Foo Fighters. Okay?
Right. Yeah.
But so I don't know. It'll be interesting to see what Dave Grohl does next, and what the rest of the band does.
He seems addicted to making music, like he's never stopped. So he'll be doing something. Chris Shiflett is playing the Opry with his country band now. Like I didn't
really
know that I just saw it this past couple weeks ago, but I don't know, what if everybody doesn't stay in the band too? Like maybe there's a couple that just say, hey, I'm done, Yeah.
Maybe there's another side project for him, like them Crooked Vultures was.
Yeah.
I don't know. I think there are a lot of different things, but I think obviously the priority seems to be, and rightly so, just working through this tragedy for Dave, for himself, for the rest of the band, and for Taylor's family. And I think a lot of responsibility falls on Dave Grohl's shoulders. So people pushing him to make decisions about, hey, what are you going to do next? When are you going to play again? That's entirely unfair.
Yeah.
So
absolutely.
All we can do is hope and pray for the best for him and for Taylor's family, and when he's ready, he's ready.
Yep. Yep. Absolutely.
Yeah.
Couldn't have said it better.
Yeah. But anyway you cut it, I think you're going to see more from Violet Grohl, which I think is a very good thing. And at some point, you're going to see Shane Hawkins in a band.
Absolutely.
Which is a very good thing.
Yeah.
So all of that is very good. But you know, who knows? I mean, right about now, we would probably be seeing Foo Fighters at Bourbon and Beyond.
Yep.
Next week.
Yep.
And
fortunate,
but that's not the case. So, but the next concert, the next Taylor Hawkins Tribute Concert, the second and final one, is September 27th, which is a Tuesday night, and it's going to be in Los Angeles. So, but if you get a chance to watch the one from Wembley that they had, I believe it was on the 2nd, Labor Day weekend, track that down and watch that. It really is fantastic from start to finish.
Yeah.
And I know you'll appreciate it if you haven't seen it.
Yeah, fully worth the $4.99 a month Paramount Plus subscription.
Yes. All right. Well, I thought it was important that we talk about that, but from a music standpoint, especially, this was not a whiskey show. So if you came on wanting to hear us talk about something new and different in bourbon, this wasn't the time to do that. We didn't feel like it was appropriate to be drinking tonight when we're talking about Taylor and the struggles that he had. So we wanted to make this about him and honoring him and Dave Grohl and the rest of the band. So tune in next time. We'll have some whiskey, I promise. But speaking of next time.
All right, we're going to have our good friend Amzie Wenning on. We're going to be talking about Bourbon on the Banks and then get into some music that's meaningful to him as well. So that'll be a great one. If you've met Amzie, you know he's a treat to be around. So it's exciting to get to have him on.
Yeah, it will be a whole lot of fun. So we'll look forward to having him around. Drew, where can people find you on social media?
So I'm on Twitter at DrewCrawley63 and on Instagram at Drew.Crawley63. I am terrible at self-promotion, but if you do follow Instagram, we're getting ready to announce a bunch of really cool stuff, live shows, new music, all that jazz. So follow along.
Yep. And going to start recording some more on the new album, right?
Yeah. Yep. We have our next session in 2 weeks. So going to go up there and hopefully bust out some more songs. We'll see. It's going to be fun.
Awesome. As for the show, you can find us on Facebook. We have just launched a Facebook. We've always had a Facebook page. We've just launched a Facebook group, and we want people to come in, be able to talk about in the group the things that they're drinking, the things that they're listening to. They're sitting together, gathering with some friends on their porch, drinking some whiskey and listening to some music. Tell us what's in your glass. Tell us what's in your ears. We want to know. I think that'll be a lot of fun. So be sure to check that out. And you can watch the show on YouTube. So go on over there and subscribe to the show. You can listen to the show on your favorite podcast platforms as well. So you can find, like I said, you can find us on Facebook. You can find us on Instagram. We're about everywhere. So, all right. Anything else, Drew?
No, that'll do it for me.
All right. Well, until next time, everybody, cheers, love, and free bird. And we are out. Thanks.
Good night.